Hey YouTube, in today's video we're going to be breaking down my 2022 Shulk matchup chart. Since all the balance patches are likely done for Smash Ultimate, unfortunately, I thought now would be a good time to break down Shulk's matchup chart. This is going to be part 1 of 2, where I'm going to be breaking down all of Shulk's winning matchups. And then in part 2, we're going to go over all of his even matchups and some of his losing matchups. And I promise I will finish part 2 this time. Promise. So be sure to subscribe for the second part. Also, be sure to leave any feedback or comments you may have down below, as well as joining my Discord server. Alright, let's get right into it. Alright, so for the first matchup, for our first category, we're going to have 70-30. So there is a few particular matchups, in my opinion, that Shulk just absolutely stops. Like, there's just pretty much no chance for the other opponent. And those three characters, I'm going to go and put them all out now. It's going to be Little Mac, Jigglypuff, and Ganondorf. There he is. Yeah, so these three characters get absolutely stomped by Shulk. There's just not really anything they can do. Because even some of the other matchups like 60-40, like there is still like a couple things that, you can still, with any kind of cheese they may have just to kind of, cheese out Shulk. But these characters like Little Mac can't approach. He has to approach. He can't do it well because he's going to lose to Nair every time he tries to, or any of Shulk's aerials. You throw Little Mac off stage, his recovery is better and more dynamic than it used to be, but it's still just not good against Shulk and his, massive aerials. There's just no way for him to come back on stage most of the time. So as long as you aren't just blindly approaching a Little Mac as Shulk, as long as you choose your engagements carefully and just really counterplay him, you really shouldn't be struggling. I have never struggled with Little Mac with this character, and in my opinion, you shouldn't either. Next is going to be Jigglypuff, who really relies on her aerials for her to thrive. And the problem is her aerials are very, very short ranged. And she always wants to be in the air, which makes it super easy to just keep constantly swatting her out of the air as Shulk. Between, Nair and forward air, even up air, every aerial in the book, up tilt for example too, are all going to be really good tools at just shutting her out, even when she tries to recover too. I mean, and obviously, Jigglypuffs have been pretty good with, recovering dynamically, around that stuff. Really the only time that Jigglypuff even has an edge is when she's edge guarding, because she's such a strong edge guarder. She can mess up Shulk off stage. Jump part definitely helps, so Shulk does have that to help kind of counterbalance that a little bit. You just have to be careful with Jigglypuff, knowing when to use your jump, because if she takes your jump off stage, you're pretty much done for. You just have to be really careful with that. Other than that, it's a pretty free matchup. And the same thing goes for Ganondorf. You just have to really know the matchup and know how to not get hit by all of his bullshit. Just, not landing into random F smashes, and, you know what he's going to do. Like, what a Ganondorf is going to do when you get into the matchup. And Shulk is just going to pretty much dominate Ganondorf's entire kit because he's so slow. He has no mobility. His combos are all very, straightforward. You can shield art them. The only combo he can really do to you is going to be like, what, down throw, nair, dash attack, or whatever at low percents. But if you just go to shield art, that was the only combo he could do. That's out of the cards now. So it's just like, okay, well, GG. How else is he gonna? He can't approach you. He can't approach you with Nair existing. So it's just another free matchup. Plus, you also edge guard him for free because his recovery is so weak. You can even just swat him off stage at like 50%. He loses his jump, he's gone. So yeah, those are gonna be the three major matchups that Shulk's just gonna completely curb stomp. So now we are going to get into the 60-40 matchups. So these are also matchups that Shulk is going to win pretty confidently. But these characters don't it's not unplayable for the opponent, is the major point here. So the first character I'm going to have in here is going to be the Animal Crossing characters, which is Villager and Isabelle. Yeah, so with Villager and Isabelle, it's kind of the similar kind of thing to like Little Mac and stuff, where it's just like, or sorry, not Little Mac. It's kind of similar to Jigglypuff, where you just can't approach really, because you're just going to get completely outranged and outzoned by Shulk. And the setups don't really do anything. The biggest thing that I think is probably the most helpful in this matchup is just their slingshots with their forward air, back air, and also being able to edge guard really dynamically with their aerials off stage and having such a strong recovery. They can edge guard Shulk. That is like the one thing that they have. And I think they can do it more consistently than Jigglypuff can, just because of the range on their attacks. And also, not only does it act for really good edge guarding, but it also acts for really solid, just like stuffing out Shulk's jumps in neutral, because Shulk, just like a lot of characters, constantly want to pressure with aerials with nair and forward air, so that's going to cause a lot of jumping in, so Shulks are going to jump in a lot, and it's all just kind of timing based, but you can stuff out a lot of Shulk's approaches and jumps with slingshot. So it's kind of just up to one player or the other as to who's going to get that timing correctly, because Shulk can also shut down the slingshot too if he attacks at the right time. It's just kind of a weird interaction, but for the most part, if you know the matchup, you will not get hit by slingshot all the time. Just be careful when you're jumping in. So Banjo, kind of a similar character to Villager and Isabel. He just doesn't have a lot of range. He just doesn't really have anything very threatening against swords. Like, I think Banjo just kind of loses to swords in general. That's going to be a lot of these matchups, I think, is 60-40, where a lot of these characters just lose to swords in general. So, like, the only threat Banjo really has is Wonder Wing. So as long as you're playing around Wonder Wing properly, like, you know he's going to recover back with it at least once. He's going to constantly use it and disadvantage her to get back on stage, so just be aware of that, and that goes for any character versus Banjo. Other than that, he's just not really a big threat. Bowser Jr., he can't really approach because he really relies on his approaches to come out of his Koopa Clown car with his side B or whatever that goes across stage. It's a really telegraphed kind of approach that Shulk's Nair just kind of shuts down, and it's kind of the same deal as Sonic, which I'll get into in a bit, where it's like, you know how they're going to approach. Yeah, I don't know. It's not a matchup I'm super like familiar with, because like nobody plays this character, so I'm not like an expert in this matchup. But I do know in theory that Shulk shouldn't struggle against this character. Alright, next is going to be Donkey Kong, and you might be wondering why I would put Donkey Kong in 60-40 rather than maybe like 70-30, considering he's, considered one of the worst characters in the game. Yeah, Shulk's matchup spreads against the heavies aren't as good as you might think they are, because the thing is with the heavies is, yeah, they're big, so you can get a lot of free hits on them. But the thing is when you look at their frame data and their hitboxes, you go, wait a minute, they have just as long hitboxes with their, massive arms, but then they also have better framed. So like, you can sometimes just lose to like DK back air or dash attack and just all these, really quick options that DK actually has. And sometimes edgeguarding him can surprisingly be hard, because it's really hard to mess with his recovery, because it's just such a massive hitbox. Like, it's just hard to mess with. Like, if DK recovers early, already gets that hitbox out, by the time you try to go for a swing on him, you'll lose that interaction every time. So it's not as easy as it looks. It's still definitely in your favor, just because he's just a giant monkey that you kind of beat around for free. But at the same time, he does have some things that kind of make you go, wow. Like, I remember one time I went to a tournament and I literally almost lost to some random dude playing DK, and I was like, how am I almost losing this? And it's just because he just has better frame data. And so I had to go Roy game too, and I just completely, reverse 2-0'd him. But anyways, I was just like, how did I lose a game to DK as Shulk against some random guy who was just whack? Anyways, next is going to be Dr. Mario. So I'm going to put Doc in 60-40, and Mario is going to be elsewhere. Okay, so I put Dr. Mario in 60-40 because his combos just aren't as threatening as Mario's, for one, and for two, the lack of just, lesser aerial mobility plus his weaker recovery just means easier edge guards for Shulk. Like, you don't even have to get a complicated edge guard against him. Sometimes you can just twat him off stage with a forward air and he just won't come back. And then, like, when they try to recover with his Cyclone, it's pretty easy to edge guard, because it's not something like DK's uppy, where it's just this massive wide hitbox. So it's pretty easy to edge guard that. So as most people know, both the Marios struggle against swords, so it's no different here. The reason Dr. Mario is going to be in 60-40 specifically, though, is just because of the bad recovery and weaker aerial mobility, less threatening combos. Next is going to be Ice Climbers. Ice Climbers pretty much get shut down. I almost was even debating putting him in 70-30, but the thing is, I just don't really know this matchup, because I've just never hardly encountered this character, besides maybe like a couple times on Elite Smash, so I don't want to sound like I'm an expert in this matchup. But I do know that anytime Ice Climbers would even try to somehow get some magical setup going, like, the Icy's combos are super hard, super inconsistent, very hard to get. So even if that once in a blue moon where Ice Climbers was able to get one started, Shulk would just go into shield or smash art and it would just become irrelevant. So it's just like, they can't do what they want because of Shulk's Metal Arts just pretty much shutting them down, as well as their pretty linear approach options, where they're just going to throw the little icicles at you, which you can easily counterplay. And then their side B, which can be a little annoying to deal with at first, their weird spin move. But as long as you learn how to counterplay that, just, jump over it, punish it with a nair, or shield it, punish it with nair out of shield, whatever. But it's not going to be a big deal to play around. So the counterplay is super easy against Ice Climbers as Shulk, just because of the Monado Arts and his better kit. Next, so I'm going to go ahead and put a bunch of characters out here at once. I'm going to lay down all of the Shotos. Harry. Lastly is Ryu. So all these characters, it's kind of the same deal because they all kind of fish for similar things. And I know I said all Shotos. I know that Terry and Kazuya aren't Shotos. So the thing with all 4 of these characters is that they just don't have any range, and most of them don't really have good approach options. Like, they kind of thrive off of, they're a more bait and punish based playstyle, which causes them to have to kind of wait for your opponent to approach them, for them to punish, and to get their combos and deadly confirms from there. And it's just really hard to do for them because of their just lack of range, especially against Shulk. I mean, all 4 of these characters lose pretty hard to sword characters, and with Shulk that's no different. And you know, that's dialed up to an 11 just because of how much range Shulk has. Plus, you know, the thing that they've always had an edge on is their deadly kill confirms. But those kill confirms could be, you know, become irrelevant when shield art's put into play. So like, you know, say they are going to get some kind of Shoryuken combo, you're going to be able to shield art that. Gary tries to get like one of his power dunk combos, you're going to be able to shield art that. Kazuya, all of his bajillion kill setups that are terrifying. By the time he, you know, gets the perfect setup, you're going to be able to shield art that one time and get out of that situation. The Ken and Ryu isn't as bad as I think Gary and Kazuya, just because they do have Hadouken, which is pretty useful. You know, having that projectile which can force an approach is super helpful for them. Kazuya's laser and Terry's like geyser move don't really have that same threat level. Yeah, the major thing is they just kind of get stomped on in neutral and in a disadvantage. And then even once they are in advantage, you can just shield art and then, you know, they can't do anything. So the big point here is they just can't really play the game against Shulk very consistently. Obviously, there'll be situations where they can. You know, you're going to get Shulk in a weird spot. He's not going to have shield art, and you'll probably get a stock early or something, which can totally happen. And that's the reason I'm going to put him still in 60-40 rather than like something ridiculous like 70-30, because they still are good characters and they still have stuff. It's just really hard. Right, next is going to be Kirby. So Kirby is 60-40. And if you're wondering why I would put Kirby here and not here with Jigglypuff, because they still have very different kits. Like, I don't feel like Kirby relies on, like, obviously he relies on his aerials, but he doesn't have the same like aerial mobility. Like, he doesn't have to rely on that. He does play a pretty decent ground game too. Like, a lot of especially good Kirbys, I think, are honestly more grounded Kirbys who are relying on just being such a small hitbox on the ground and being able to pancake, you know, under so much stuff, you know, and using their, because Kirby actually has really good tilts, pretty good aerials. He just doesn't have aerial mobility, and he doesn't have the, you know, kill confirms or combos or anything to really be super threatening. But so it's still a pretty easy matchup, but it can be a little bit trickier because Kirbys do play a more grounded game, so it doesn't make it quite as free as Jigglypuff, who's going to constantly be in the air and above you and around you and stuff, which just, you know, you're just swatting a fly out of the air. It's not quite that easy with Kirby. Plus, Kirby down air can really mess up Shulk's recovery, like, consistently. So that is also something to be aware of. So the thing with Luigi is, you know, Luigi's rely on their 0 to death combos, which, one, the Luigi players themselves can't do consistently. Two, even if they did manage to somehow get it done consistently, you're going to shield art it anyways. So, you know, there's not really a big threat there. Plus, Luigi, again, similar to the Marios, just don't have the range to really contest a lot of sword characters and lose to a lot of sword characters. I mean, it's still a doable matchup. I've still seen, you know, Mario's and Luigi's, you know, dominate Shulk's, so it's still definitely possible. But I think for the most part, it's just really hard for them to approach and to really, you know, start any combos or anything for that matter. All right, next is going to be Lucario. Lucario loses to Shulk pretty hard too. Again, it's just a lack of range, just losing to sword characters in general. Aura's not, you know, as big of a threat to Shulk as it would be other characters because of shield art being a thing. You know, all of a sudden that combo you may have been starting, or that really deadly move that was coming to kill you, I shield art it, and all of a sudden that aura just was like, oh, well, what was the point of that? You can also use, you know, the Monado arts. You can use Buster and Smash to rack up his damage quickly, use Smash to get him out quickly, you know, and kill him much earlier so he's not building up too much aura with Smash art. And obviously this is still, you know, potentially you wouldn't be able to kill him in Smash art. He'd be a good Lucario. But, you know, if it's a good Shulk, good Lucario, same skill level, you know, Shulk's going to have that upper hand of constantly being able to manipulate what Lucario can do with the Monado art stats. Next, I'm going to have the Earthbound kiddos. Again, pretty free matchups. They just don't have the range. Recovers are easy to mess with. Lucas's is a little bit easier just because he does have the snake for his tether recovery, which does make it a little bit harder to edgeguard him, especially if they're consistently using it. Yeah, it's not a terrible matchup. I mean, and it still is winnable for them as well. But I think just on a normal basis, you're going to have the upper hand against these characters at all times. You can easily run them over and win neutral with speed art. You're going to be able to edge guard them just in general. Yeah, you're just going to win most neutral interactions. I mean, it's kind of simple. It's as simple as that. All right, so this one's going to be interesting because I'm going to put Steve here. So Steve is definitely considered a top tier character at this point. And I'm going to say that Steve is hard countered by Shulk. Hard countered. Like, debatably, I could even maybe argue 70-30. This character gets shut down by Shulk in like almost every way. The thing with Steve here is that, what does he do? He's going to sit at the ledge, camp, set up blocks in front of him, and mine, right? So what do we do against that as Shulk? You go speed art, you go buster art, you break down those blocks in one hit, or you just jump over them, get through. He's going to try to shield it. He's going to try to do an aerial out of shield. The thing is, his aerials suck out of shield. Like, his aerials out of shield suck. Bad out of shield options. So you're going to win because neutral out of shield is going to be better. You're going to be able to start a combo. You're going to be able to put him at disadvantage. So camping isn't an option for him because of speed art, jump art, buster art. His ladder combos aren't an issue because of shield art, so he can't up tilt you into oblivion. He can't lead you, into an up smash. He can't do that because of shield art, or even smash art too. If he's getting back from disadvantage, he wants to either use his elytra, or he wants to recover with a minecart. Can't do that because they're both very telegraphed recoveries. Shulk can forward air that off, forward air him into the blast zone easily. Even in neutral, a lot of Steves will try to minecart at a disadvantage. As long as you know how to play around minecart, it's super easy to just jump over it and punish it. So, in my opinion, maybe it's just because I haven't fought like a top level Steve. I haven't had that experience. Most Steves I've played, I've played against what I would think is some pretty decent Steves, but whenever I've fought against Steve as Shulk, it's just been a curb stomp. They can't do anything against this character. And it makes sense on paper too that, he just doesn't have the range. He doesn't have the out of shield options. His disadvantage options are super telegraphed. So I just think, the Monado arts could manipulate Steve to pretty much not let him do his thing. So I just think it's a really, really free matchup for Shulk. Next is going to be Olimar. Olimar, again, just doesn't really have the range to really be a threat. His recovery is pretty exploitable. The Pikmins can be easily shrugged off with Shulk's aerials, just do a quick nair, they're gone. I don't have a lot of experience with this matchup just because, hardly anybody plays Olimar. But in theory, there's really no reason you would be losing, consistently losing to this character. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Olimar struggles against swords. Everybody knows that. So he's going to struggle against Shulk too. Piranha Plant's a weird character because I actually do have matchup experience with it. He's a pretty scary character. He's hard to get off a ledge with, but you do have options with jump art and shield art. You can get off of ledge pretty easy, but if you don't have those, it does make it hard to get off a ledge against Piranha Plant. But as long as you're using your arts correctly, is not a big issue. You do have to watch out for his down B because he can armor through it. So if you try to attack it, he's just going to armor it if you aerial it. I don't know, it's a weird matchup, but I do think for the most part, Shulk does win it. Some of those Piranha Plant players are crazy. So sometimes you might just lose to Piranha Plant because he requires you to approach because good Piranha Plant's not going to approach you. So you have to be able to consistently approach properly with Shulk and not get punished every single time. And something that I've always said with Shulk is his approach options aren't the greatest because Nair is, Nair is a really good approach option, but it's also his only approach option. So if the opponent knows how to play around that and how to counterplay, knowing the fact that you're going to approach with Nair almost every single time, it doesn't make it as scary. And I think with Piranha Plant being such a defensive, camping, kind of character, it does give him a bit of a slight edge. For the most part, when Piranha Plant is in disadvantage, Shulk it's going to be pretty free. Greninja's a pretty free matchup just because he has such a straight game plan where it's going to be, I'm going to dash attack, I'm going to fish for nairs, I'm going to probably down air when I'm at disadvantage. It's just a very telegraphed game plan, and in his His or her? What gender is Greninja? I don't even know. The lack of out of shield options lets Shulk just nair out a shield for free whenever, you know, Greninja's in a tight spot. So it's just, you're going to be able to consistently win those interactions. It's not a matchup I've played too much. When I have, it's just, you know, not a big issue because I can usually just, you know, nair out a shield for free. And Greninja can't really punish much that I do just because of the lack of out of shield options. You know that they're going to approach with nair or dash. All right, last two characters. We're going to have Wii Fit Trainer and then the Belmonts. Okay, so Wii Fit Trainer. Wii Fit Trainer definitely struggles against Shulk just because she doesn't have she just has weird hitboxes and they're not very, you know, ranged. She gets edge guarded very freely by Shulk. There's not really a lot of, you know, recovery mix-ups she can do. It's just such a exploitable recovery. Shulk's going to be able to edge guard that consistently. Can rush her down with speed art, so it makes her more, you know, campy defensive playstyle, much harder for her to, you know, play. I do actually have a surprising amount of experience with this matchup from my locals. There's a couple different people that are like Wii Fit Trainer one-tricks. Never a matchup I ever struggled with. Pretty easy character to beat because speed art's just gonna disallow her from following her game plan, and the recovery is just super exploitable. And then lastly is going to be the Belmonts, Simon and Richter. The major reason that it's 60-40 is just because of how awful their recovery is. They just can't recover once you throw them off stage. Super free edge guard. But in terms of actual, like, neutral, like, I feel like they're actually pretty even because the chain whip is actually super hard to, you know, play against because forward air is just a long and massive hitbox. You can actually shut down most of Shulk's jump approaches pretty consistently. Like, a lot of times you have to play much more grounded, you know, just a lot more carefully. It takes more thought as Shulk. It's not like some of these other matchups where you can just nair into their shield for free or just, you know, keep nairing, running around them in circles with speed art. Like, you actually have to put in some effort and thought into this matchup. But, you know, still for the most part, once Richter or Simon is in disadvantage, it's a pretty free matchup. But neutral can be pretty hard. You do have shield art against a lot of his ledge trapping, which is good. Or, you know, you can also use jump art and just jump over and bypass the whole ledge trapping situation. So Shulk definitely does have stuff to hard counter Richter. But neutral, I say, is... Alright, that is going to do it for the 60-40 category. So now we have a few more matchups in the 55-45 category, and this video is going to be wrapped up. Alright, so first matchup I'm going to have in here going to be Inkling. So the thing with Inkling is that in neutral, she's a really good character. She probably has one of the best neutrals in the game. You know, just a really solid fundamental kit all around. The biggest thing with Inkling is that you do still have a little bit of an inherent advantage just because Inkling does struggle a little bit against swords just because of her lack of range and disjoints. So it's mostly, honestly, just for that reason. Shulk does have just a very slight edge, and that's what you're going to see in 55-45, where they're going to be very close to even matchups, but there's going to be like one thing that those characters have against them. Just one, or I'm sorry, one thing that Shulk has, you know, against that he can do to counterplay against these characters. And with that, it's just going to be mostly just the fact that he's a sword character. Other than that, it's an even matchup. Honestly, like, you can't even mess with her recovery because she has such a good recovery for some reason. Really solid neutral. It can be, you know, if Inkling just plays better neutral than you, you'll just lose. And next is going to be Bayonetta. Not very familiar with this matchup. It's just kind of a weird matchup in my opinion. Because Bayonetta's doing her thing. She wants to do her own thing, and then Shulk wants to do his own thing, and it's just kind of hard to like figure out like, okay, how does this work? What honestly gives Shulk that edge is going to be the fact that shield art can counter her Bayonetta's combos. The thing is Bayonetta is such a combo-based character that even if you do shield art one of those combos, she'll start another one as soon as it's over. So you can still get your combos pretty consistently. And, you know, once you're up in the air getting beat around by Bayonetta, the only option Shulk really has once shield art is gone is to nair, which isn't going to be out until frame 13. So she can honestly hold her own in advantage pretty well, especially once shield art's gone. Neutral, I think Shulk also probably has a slight edge in neutral too, because of his disjoints, and, you know, Bayonetta's approaches are pretty linear with her heel slide, I think is what it's called. Whatever her side B is. It's very hard to choose between 60-40, 55-45. I'm just not really sure. I'm not really familiar with this matchup too much. So I could be wrong. If you do have experience with it, let me know. Next is going to be the Pits. So both of these characters, I mean, they're pretty much the same character with a very couple small differences. Doesn't make a difference in the matchup at all. They're just very honest, simple characters. And the thing with Shulk is he cheats more. The Monado arts are just better than what they have. The Pits are just they're too honest for their own good, to be honest. That's all it is. All right, next on here is going to be Duck Hunt. Duck Hunt is a terrifying character. I've only ever played this matchup once in tournament, by someone who was way better than me, and I got absolutely dumpstered. So I do think on paper, if I had known the matchup better, I think that it would be more of a, you know, still slightly in Shulk's favor, but it is just such a weird matchup. So I could be wrong. It could be more so in Shulk's favor. Maybe I'm just ass at the game. I just remember one time I played against a really good duck hunting bracket. I got fucking dumpstered. It's just a weird matchup, and you have to have the experience, really. Both players do. And I mean, I think assuming if both players have really good matchup knowledge of the other, which I would imagine, even if we look at like Kome and what's the duck hunt player's name, like Rido or something like that, they both probably know each other's matchup really well, so I would be curious to know how that one goes. Alright, next is going to be Incineroar. Incineroar is a terrifying character. His command grab is obnoxious. He's just a really obnoxious character to play against. You have to like change your entire game plan according to, you know, Incineroar. He's just one of those kind of characters where you have to, you know, approach the matchup so differently than you would any other matchup. So that's what kind of just gives him that natural advantage, is he's just weird to play against. But for the most part, you should still be winning consistently. His recovery is surprisingly hard to mess with, because a lot of Incineroars have been pretty good at, you know, mixing up the recoveries and having that perfect angle for recovering higher, recovering lower, you know, just getting the right angles. But it's still mostly in Shulk's favor, because you're going to still be able to win most neutral interactions. You just have to watch out for his counter ability that charges him up. If you can actually predict that, you can get a lot of grabs out of it, throw him off stage, and then you can hold him at the ledge and ledge trap him for, you know, infinity. So for the most part, I would say it's still slightly in Shulk's favor. Alright, next is going to be King K. Rool. So the reason I actually have him here rather than like any of these other matchups is kind of the same reason Incineroar is here, because he is such an obnoxious character. You have to completely change how you play the game when you're playing against K. Rool. You have to counterplay around his cannon, you have to counterplay around his crown. You can't really edgeguard him because his propeller is just, the hitbox on it is way bigger than it should be. So you actually can't really edgeguard this character, surprisingly. Neutral is just a pain sometimes. I used to struggle against K. Rool. This matchup used to be really hard for me for a long time, and eventually I was just like, no, enough is enough. I'm not losing to this character anymore. So I stopped losing to this character. It was one of those characters kind of like, and I had to do this with like Little Mac as well, where it's like, okay, I'm not losing to this character anymore. You know, you just have to play a whole different like game to know how to counterplay this character. And honestly, it's similar to like Donkey Kong. Like K. Rool just has these really big hitboxes, similar to Shulk, but the difference is that, again, his frame data is still somehow better. Because Shulk just has awful startup frame. And a lot of heavies that have similar range to their attacks, while they're still not disjointed, they still come out faster than Shulk's aerials do. Like sometimes you could go to approach with a nair or forward air, and K. Rool will just forward air you or nair you, and it's like, oh, well, so much for that. So it's just a really tricky matchup, but for the most part, once you do know the matchup, it definitely is more so in your favor. It's just sometimes the armor, the fact that you can't really mess with his recovery, they can make it tricky. All right, next is going to be the other Mario, regular Mario. So yeah, so the main reason I have him here rather than here is just because Mario's just a much better, more threatening character because of his combos, and he just has a better recovery. You can still mess with him, and I mean, like, it's one of those matchups where you're either gonna, like, there might be a stock, you get dumpstered by Mario, and then you respawn, and then you dumpster him. So it's just one of those kind of back and forth matchups. Meta Knight's a weird matchup that I just don't really have experience with. I do know Meta Knight's a sword character. He is really fast. He does rely more so on like ground approaches with like his tilts. I know his nair is really good. He has stuff with back air. You can usually shut down his ladder combos pretty hard with shield art. Actually, what am I talking about? Yeah, Meta Knight goes up here. Meta Knight goes in 60-40. Yeah, because like anything that he would want to do, Shulk's still going to outrange. Plus, you could shield art out of his, or even smash art out of his ladder combos. Like, yeah, Shulk should win that pretty consistently. Don't listen to me. I don't know what I'm talking about. Why are you still watching this? Next is going to be Sonic. So with Sonic, I actually talked about this in my Discord recently with Sonic. Somebody had asked about the Shulk versus Sonic matchup. And in my opinion, Shulk definitely has the advantage in this matchup, very slightly, just because Sonic's approach options are so telegraphed. He relies so much on spin dash to approach. Shulk can honestly counterplay that really hard. I think Sonic's just one of those characters that just kind of naturally just loses against swords a lot of the times. Definitely still doable, but I think Shulk is especially bad because You can keep up with Sonic with Speed Art. You can, his Nair just pretty much prevents Sonic from approaching. Like if you want to approach a Spin Dash, like you just can't. because you could Air Slash out of shield, you could Nair out of shield, you can, usually when Sonics do get out of their Spin Dash, a lot of them have a tendency to jump after they Spin Dash. You can catch said jump. It's just not hard to really punish their options out of Spin Dash. Spin Dash is just really hard to use against Shulk Sonic. Really the key here with Sonic would be just to play a more neutral based Sonic that isn't just constantly Spin Dashing. You kind of actually have to play the character. And so when you have to do that, I think Shulk's still going to just have that advantage. Next is going to be Peach. Peach is a terrifying character. Definitely probably one of the better characters in the game for sure. I think Shulk still has a slight edge, just because Peach doesn't have really the range to really deal with swordies, and that kind of goes with a lot of the different sword characters. And again, Shield Art exists, which can shut down a lot of Peach combos, because Peach combos are obviously terrifying. They don't happen every stock, they don't happen every game usually. So if Peach does manage to get one of those insane combos going, you can Shield Art it and counterplay it. Recovery is not, it's a little tricky to mess with, so it's not like it's super consistent edge guard. I don't think her ledge options are super good either, so you can usually keep her a ledge pretty well. It just isn't good against sword characters. That's really how it is mostly what it breaks down to. Mega Man, the pellets are kind of annoying. It makes it kind of hard to approach sometimes with Shulk. You just kind of constantly get hit by the lemons. A lot of the times you have to play a bit more of a grounded game against Mega Man. A lot more tilts and really short, short hop nairs and stuff like that. You can't just go wild with your approaches. Speed Art can help you run over Mega Man, so he can't really do what he wants. Recovery can be edge guarded if they don't recover properly. As long as you play carefully around, the lemons, it's not too hard. I think Shulk still has a slight advantage against Mewtwo, mostly because he's such a big-bodied hitbox and his disjoints aren't really that good. Plus he's super light, so you're going to be getting pretty consistent kills off of him. His double jump is super slow on startup, so he can't really jump out of a lot of situations, which makes him rely on his up B. His up B is really good. You can't really mess with his up B recovery, but I mean, it's super easy to catch him double jumping. Mewtwo just kind of struggles against swords. That's kind of, I think, a common theme for this category is a lot of these characters are really good characters. They just kind of have a slight, disadvantage against sword characters. Shulk being a sword character is just going to have that slight advantage, and that's really the biggest reason. Next, I'm going to put the Mii characters. I'm not an expert on the Mii characters. I only ever encounter them every once in a while on Elite Smash, so I'm by no means an expert on these matchups. I guess Mii Gunner, Mii Gunner. Yeah, I'm going to say that Shulk has a little bit of an advantage against all these. I know Mii Brawler's a really good character, very comparable to Mario, so I'm going to kind of go about that the same way I would against Mario for Mii Brawler, where Shulk just has a sword, so he's going to naturally just do better against Mii Brawler. I know Mii Sword Fighter's not a very good character. I think he's probably the weakest Mii, from what I'm aware of. So Shulk's probably still going to have just that inherent advantage, just the bigger sword. Probably going to be able to win neutral more with Speed Art, and just the Monado Arts I think are probably going to mess him up versus anything the Mii Sword Fighter can probably do to Shulk. Mii Gunner, pretty good Mii, but again, Mii Gunner has a very setup, camping based play style that I think Shulk can consistently rush down with Speed Art pretty consistently, with Mii Gunner not really having the outer shield options or the escape options to really counter that. Next is going to be Game & Watch. Game & Watch is a terrifying character where, once again, you have to play a certain way against this character. You have to play very specifically to accommodate for Mr. Game & Watch's bullshit. For the most part, Shulk is going to win this matchup pretty consistently if you're playing properly, because the disjoints are just going to make life hell for Mr. Game & Watch. You have to be aware that he's going to down air every single time he's in disadvantage. He's going to up B out of shield every time he's in disadvantage. Forward air's not too scary because it's just kind of this weird drop off hitbox. You can usually fade back and just wad him away as Shulk. You could Shield Art to help get out of the ladder combos with his up air, I think. But yeah, for the most part, it's just you have that inherent advantage. But every once in a while, you might just lose. It's just kind of how Mr. Game & Watch is. Alright, next is Pac-Man. Again, kind of a more setup-based character. Pac-Man is a really good, he's probably the best, projectile setup-based character in the game right now. So he definitely is a threat. I think Shulk still has a slight advantage just because of the, you know, just superior aerials. Having the disjoint, having a sword. Pac-Man does struggle against swords. And again, while he's trying to do these setups, you can usually rush him down with Nair, using speed art, forward air, all these different tools, back air as well. I believe in some arts, or even vanilla Shulk, I think back air can actually one-shot the fire hydrant. I know it wouldn't bust her. So it's just some of these little things that just help out Shulk in that matchup. Pichu is a weird character. You can usually just shield art most through any of his scary combos. And he'll end up doing more damage to himself than he did to you through that combo. So definitely not a threatening character. You're going to usually outrange him most of the time. Actually, I think I'm going to change my mind on this character. I'm going to put him in 60-40 as well. Just really not that threatening. Besides, like, nobody plays Pichu anymore anyways. Like, if you're going to play one of the rats, you're going to be playing Pikachu. Like, it's not 2019 anymore. Nobody's playing Pichu anymore. I used to think the Shulk stomped in this matchup, but I think Robins have gotten a lot better. They've optimized their gameplay a lot more. Shulk definitely still has an advantage because Robin loses to Rushdown pretty hard. And, you know, just high mobility characters, so most of the time you are going to be winning those interactions with speed art. You can usually edgeguard him pretty well too. It's just really it just comes to playing around his projectiles. Arc fire you can usually just shield art through, or you can even SDI out of it. With using smash art or shield art or something like that. Be careful using smash art or hypersense if you get caught in an arc fire, because you could just probably die at like 50%. So don't do that. But for the most part, I think Shulk still just on average is going to win neutral more often. Even though Robin is still a pretty decent and threatening character. Rosalina. I have never played this matchup once in my life. Never. I'm gonna be honest with you. So I'm going to tell you that I'm going to still say that Shulk is slightly in the favor because of just being a sword character. I know that Rosalina struggles against swords, so I think that is going to apply the same here. And I mean, a lot of the times if Luma's, you know, close to Rosalina, you're going to be usually hitting two birds with one stone. When you're trying to attack Rosalina, you're probably going to hit the Luma too. So and you know, and Rosalina without Luma, not as threatening of a character. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not familiar with this matchup, but I'm just going to go based on the fact that I know that Rosalina does sometimes struggle against swords. I'm going to say that Shulk has a slight advantage, and I'm going to leave it at that. If you do know more about this matchup, I would love to know. I would love to hear about it. You can leave it down below, or you can even go to the Discord server and you can talk to me about it. I would love to hear what you think about this matchup. Next, we're going to have Ridley. So with Ridley, you mostly have an advantage here. Ridley's weird because Ridley has a better Nair than you. Ridley Nair is stupid. It's faster, has a pretty big hitbox still. He has a command grab, which could be a pain in the ass sometimes. Really good Ridleys can even like edge guard you with his fireballs. Has really big hitboxes and disjoints, just like Shulk does, except for he has better frame data. Like I think the biggest advantage that Shulk would have is just the fact that he's a sword character and his attacks are going to be more disjointed. I think that's really it. Like, really isn't the greatest character. But like I've said before, Shulk isn't the greatest against heavies. Like, his matchup spread against like heavies or big body characters isn't as good as you may think, because a lot of them also have big hitboxes and they come out way faster than Shulks do. Right, next is going to be Zelda. Good Zeldas can be scary. If it was a mediocre Zelda, it'd probably go here. But there is some good Zeldas that can counterplay. Neutral B is a pain. Side B can actually edge guard. Recently, I've been seeing Zeldas where they'll arc their like Din's Flame super low down. I'm like, how did they even, like, did they buff it and change it? Because I swear you didn't used to be able to arc it like way down there. Like, they can actually like stuff low recoveries, and I'm like, since when has she been able to do that? But I mean, she has some stuff. Phantom is a little tricky to play around. Usually if you jump over it, you can usually approach from there once she uses her Phantom. Good Zeldas will punish that approach because they'll know I'm baiting you to jump over with my Phantom. I'm going to throw out the Phantom. You're going to try to nair into my shield, and then I'm going to punish you from there. So, I mean, in this matchup, assuming that Zelda knows the Shulk matchup, and Shulk knows the Zelda matchup, I do think Shulk's going to have an advantage just because of his disjoints and being a sword character. Zelda loses to sword characters. Speed Art's going to help her, or help him break through any kind of camping and setups that Zelda's going to have. Sometimes Zelda can just mess you up. You might just get kicked to 50% and you might die. So it's just weird. Next is going to be Wario. This is another one of those matchups that, I haven't had the chance to fight like really good Wario. But I do know that Shulk is good against Wario because of his disjoints, because of the Monado arts, because of being a sword character in general. Wario does try to get a waft setup if he's pulling off one of those Nair combos where, you know, he hits up tilt or falling up air to go for the waft conversion. You should be able to shield art it. Smart Wario would bait it out. Like they would, you know, up tilt you or up air you, force you into shield art, get that out, and then do that conversion. But again, it's still the fact that you would still have to do that. Like the Wario still has to get that combo twice to get that waft, because he has to do it once to bait out shield art, and he has to do it again to actually get it. So it's just different. But for the most part, I think Shulk, just inherently being a sword character with his joints, is going to have a slight advantage against Wario. Plus having the counterplay with shield art does make it hard for him to get his waft conversion. Right, and the final character for this spread, for this half of the spread I should say, is going to be Zirasu. So ZSS, she's a really good character to be honest. But again, I think she just struggles against sword characters. Her mobility does make it very hard to contest her, but speed art and like speed art, jump art, they definitely help just get around some of her like deadly edge traps. Like if you're coming back from stage, you can use jump art to usually bypass a lot of ledge trapping and kill setups that she's going to have at ledge, which is where she's scariest. Speed art can also just help contest in neutral. She's really light, so you can usually get some early kills in speed art, but at the same time, DSS might just get a Nair down air, or I'm sorry, not Nair down air, Nair down special. You could die. Like it's just one of those characters. I think she's a very explosive character, and Shulk can also be very explosive at times. So you know, it might be a situation where Shulk's gonna blow up ZSS, and then she spawns back, and then she's gonna blow up Shulk. It just is one of those matchups that goes both ways. But I do think Shulk does have the tools to do that slightly more consistently. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this first half of the matchup chart. So if you guys enjoyed, be sure to subscribe. If you guys want to see more, let me know in the comments. The second half of this will be coming within the next few days. I just wanted to divide it up just so, one, I can give my voice a break, because I'm not good at talking for a long period of time, so I don't think I can go for another 2 hours talking about these matchups. So yeah, this is it for now. Stay tuned for more. Be sure to join the Discord server. Let me know your thoughts down below. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.